Breaking news here on the Field of 68 from our own Jeff Goodman. He reported, and let me make sure that I have the words right in front of me and the tweet right in front of, I guess the X post right in front of me, but I want to make sure that I phrase this the correct way. You wrote, breaking: Indiana head coach Mike Woodson is contemplating stepping down and retiring according to your sources. If Woodson does retire, the current plan would be for him to finish out this season. Indiana plays Michigan on Saturday in Assembly Hall. This is obviously a fluid situation, as all of these tend to be, Jeff, but what can you tell us, and why was there kind of a flurry of kind of news and reaction and smoke on this today?
Well, again, I mean, look at what they've done lately, right? I
Mhm.
mean, they've lost 6 of 7. They're struggling at this point, and he has lost the support of all the high-level boosters at this point. And that's one of the biggest things that kept him around for this year, frankly. You know, he had 2 or 3 big-time boosters that bankrolled the $5+ million in NIL that kept him around this year.
Yep.
But this was a make or break year. Obviously, they're struggling mightily. They have as much talent as probably any team in the Big Ten, not named Illinois. And right now, they're on the wrong side of the bubble. So at this point, discussions have taken place throughout the day today, according to my sources. And again, is there pressure on? Sure, there's pressure on Mike Woodson, what he wants to do here. Is it going to be something where he coaches the rest of the year and then retires? That's the current plan, But again, things can change here with Woodson, and they have changed with Woodson. It may be something where that's the case, Rob. He decides he's going to retire, go through the rest of the year, and then Saturday, they're playing Michigan, and former IU manager Dusty May, who most of the fan base there probably would like to see replace Woodson. Well, if they get boat raced on Saturday and the crowd is chanting Dusty, 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 what does that do? Does that change Mike Woodson's plan of coaching the rest of the season? So again, there are some things at play here, trying to figure it out. Obviously, contractually as well, Rob, he's owed about $8 million over the next 2 years. That can be spread out over 8 years, which is so manageable. You know, you're talking $1 million a year over 8 years is absolutely nothing. If Indiana does, which I'm told, again, the plan is Mike Woodson will not be the coach next season. That's the plan right now.
Okay. The Obviously the situation, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but I am curious, as it feels like a lot of these decisions kind of get sped up a little bit because of when the portal opens and what that requires out of a coaching staff in terms of evaluating your next group of players that are coming into the program. Does that have any impact in how these boosters feel about it? Does that make sense? Like, we saw it last year with Chris Holtman, right, where they made a move earlier than usual because they wanted to try to find a way to make sure that they were as active as they could be in the portal. You don't want to be going through a coaching search, more or less, when you're also trying to make sure that you go get the players, because there's not an infinite number of players in the transfer portal. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's just come to a head at this point. And again, when I say contemplating retirement, listen, they're trying to let him go out the right way
Mhm.
as much as anything, right? He's one of their own. So you want him to go out the right way with retirement rather than being let go or fired or anything like that. So that's where this, kind of the semantics are involved right now with trying to figure that out, how you're going to word it. Number one, they want to take care of their own. And number two, whether he finishes out the season or not. And obviously, if he doesn't, an assistant comes in. Listen, they're not far off the bubble. I mean, we just saw what Arkansas did in the span of 2 games. They went from nobody talking about them on the bubble to now
Mhm.
they're firmly on the bubble with 2 wins against Kentucky and a crappy Texas team that's probably right on the bubble, probably on the wrong side of the bubble today. So if let's say if Woodson does stick around, doesn't make this announcement, and they win against Michigan at home, then they beat, I think the next one after that is at Michigan State. You're talking about a team that, again, is right on the bubble. So I think ultimately, if you're Indiana, you probably want something done now so that you know the future and you can start talking to agents about other names and find out, hey, I know what the names that are going to be thrown out. I mean, Brad Stevens is going to be thrown out there like he was last time. And again, it'll take one call to his wife, and Brad will
Look, Jeff, the way that works is every single big job that opens. Oh, you got to call Brad Stevens. You got to call Jay Wright. You got to call Billy Donovan.
But
All
this
those
one is
calls.
different for Brad. I understand
Mhm.
Indiana's thought. Like, I understand that. Like, if there's a job other than going back to Butler, like I've said over the years, when he's 62 years old, that Brad Stevens, they call him and they're in bad shape like they are now. And Brad says, okay, you know what? I love Butler so much. I'm going to go rescue Butler. The only other one to me that I think Brad, and maybe he wouldn't do it just because of Butler now, but would be in college Indiana. But Brad Stevens, I talked to him a month ago. He loves his life right now. He loves the flexibility of his life. Last I checked, they won a title last year with him as GM. They're in position to repeat potentially again, and he's got flexibility and a different lifestyle. And why the hell would you want to go back to college right now? When he can coach in the NBA again. If he says, I want to coach, he'll have 5 other NBA teams calling him this offseason.
Yep. All right. So once you get past those big names,
Yeah.
who are, I guess let's start with, who would you target? Who do you think would be the most receptive? And who do you think that I want you to make a prediction if this ends up being a change? Who will be the guy that ends up taking over Indiana? I think I know what you're going to say, but let's start with who you think they should target first.
All right. So again, all right, Brad. Are you interested? Scott Dolson talking to his wife. Thanks. Brad loves you. He loves Indiana. He has all the respect for you. But no thanks. Scott Drew, we did this dance a year ago with Kentucky, and ultimately it's a similar situation. Kentucky's a better job. But I think the circus and the fishbowl probably doesn't play well to Scott Drew and his family. So I think he says no. So let's cross those 2 off the list. Billy Donovan, it's not going to line up. Even if he gets fired, not going to line up. Again, I think he would. Bruce Pearl, not going to happen. He's not leaving Auburn at this point. The only way he'd leave Auburn is if Auburn would tell him tomorrow, okay, you know what? You can go to Indiana.
And they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that because they don't want to lose Bruce. So it's,
Your
Scott
son,
Drew, Bruce
Brad
Pearl,
Stevens.
not happening.
So, all right, Brad Stevens, Scott Drew, Bruce Pearl. Let's knock them off the list. All right, the one that everybody's going to talk about the most is Chris Beard. Okay, that's the one that Chris Beard, I believe, and I haven't talked to him about it, but would walk from Oxford, Mississippi to Bloomington, Indiana, if you told him he could have the Indiana job. Obviously, there's connections. He was an assistant for both Bob Knight, the late Bob Knight, for Pat Knight. He and Pat were super close years ago, not as close now. There's some obviously off the court concerns with what ultimately got Chris Beard fired at Texas. He was cleared of those charges, but I just don't know if Scott Dolson would take a chance on Chris Beard right now. I don't know. So that's a wild card. That's who knows. I'll give you a couple. Mick Cronin is a name that will certainly be mentioned. UCLA head coach who's from the Midwest, did a great job at Cincinnati, kind of beats to his own drum. I think he could be in the mix as well. Mark Byington, if you go down to like tier 2, and I'm gonna give you a big name in a minute, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait. So anybody watching, just wait for my big name here in a minute. Mark Byington was at JMU when Kurt Signetti was at JMU. So they were the football basketball coach together. Byington is first year at Vandy. They were picked to finish last in the SEC, and right now they're in the NCAA tournament. So Byington would have to be a guy that would be, again, on that secondary list. Another guy, some secondary list guys, and then I'm going to go with my home run guy, Randy Bennett. Don't love it. I just don't think Randy's personality fits Bloomington. I think you got to sell in Bloomington, especially in this day and age of NIL. And Randy Bennett's had it great in Moraga. I just don't see it. then you go some mid-major guys, which I don't think he'll go that route. I don't think he'll have to. The Ben McCullums at Drake, guys like that, I think would be in the mix. Todd Golden's another name. Grant McCaslin, who we talked to last night, who's done a great job at Texas Tech. I don't think he leaves Texas, so I would cross off him. And then you want the big name? You want my big name? All right, my big name. If I'm Indiana and Scott Dolson and I strike out on Brad Stevens, Scott Drew, Rick Pitino. That's who I'm calling. I'm calling Rick Pitino. I'm calling Rick Pitino and saying, you know what? I know you're doing well at St. John's. I know you like New York. You built this thing in 2 years, rebuilt it into something where you're back. But man, last I checked, St. John's ain't Indiana, and Indiana's got that campus feel. Their support is much different. The feel is much different than St. John's. There's no campus at St. John's. They'll show up for games, but it's a different type of feel among the basketball program. So for me, Rick Pitino, I know he's older, but who gives a shit? If you're Indiana these days, Rob, you're not playing for like 5-10 years down the road to hire a coach that's going to be there forever. You're fighting 3 years. And for Indiana, give me a year. They just had a year of football with Kurt Cignetti. You don't think they take that right now in basketball? Give me a Final Four this year, and they don't give a shit after that. Give me another couple average years.
Yeah, I thought, I kind of figured you were going to end up going there once you started teasing. Oh, I got a big name for you. It would be interesting to see if he would take it for a couple of reasons. One, I think that he loves being in New York. Like if you can build St. John's into the focal point of the sport of college basketball and also live in New York City, that feels like it makes a lot of sense for him. And the other part of it is he just mended fences with Kentucky and all the Kentucky fans. Would he go to another rival of Kentucky in the same, a year later? Probably. He might do it. I don't know if that, I think that that's something that you would have to take a look at as well. But I will say this: if he goes to Kentucky, he will crush it at Kentucky. He will absolutely crush it. The other part of it is, like, if you got a bunch of retention coming with St. John's and some of the faces that you're going to have coming in next year, it feels like, it feels like that's a good spot for St. John's to be in right now. So I don't hate it, but we'll see, man. We'll see. Listen, what about TJ Otzelberger? The last time that we talked.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yes. You know what? Let me take him out of the equation now. I would hire him. He'd be first on my list. I don't think he'd have any interest in Indiana. I don't think he'd have any interest. So yes, I probably should have started there, and I forgot. I got some information that I don't think TJ Otzelberger, again, he doesn't want to be in the fishbowl at all. So, to me, TJ Otzelberger at the Kentuckys, at the Indianas, it's not a fit. So while I would have him maybe numero uno, certainly up there. I mean, he'd be in the top 3 for me. I don't think he'll be in the discussions.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. The list. There you have the news. Again, this is a very it's a fluid situation what's happening right now at Indiana, but the main point is that the people that are decision makers are as upset as some of the fans. The people that provide the money are as upset as the random Twitter accounts that yell at you every time you say something nice about Indiana on the platform formerly known as Twitter. So we'll see what ends up happening there, but breaking news from Jeff Goodman: something might happen, more or less. That's the way that we work here on the field.
Something's likely going to happen. And again, the Woodson contemplating retirement is something that, again,
Mike Woodson might be contemplating retirement because Indiana might be contemplating firing him, is basically where we're at right now. Listen, the Field of 68 After Dark will be live at 11 o'clock tonight with Kevin Sweeney, with Kenny Freese, and with John Martin. They will dive deep into this Indiana coaching search, or the potential for an Indiana coaching search, and what is happening with Mike Woodson and that university now. For now, Jeff Goodman, my name is Rob Doster. We will see you guys tomorrow night. Your boy